One word does more damage than any other. It is not a lie. It is a word that stops you asking the next question. And that is worth more than a lie. Today we break down why the word guaranteed is the most expensive word in money and what it is actually describing. Start with what a return actually is. A return is not a reward for being clever. It is payment for accepting the possibility of loss. That is the whole of it. Somebody wants the use of your money now and cannot promise it comes back, and the extra they offer is the price of that uncertainty. Remove the uncertainty and you have removed the reason anybody is paying you anything. There is a single question at the end of this that turns the whole thing inside out. We will build it. Which leads to the arithmetic nobody says out loud. Higher return means somebody has decided the risk is higher. That is not a coincidence and it is not an opinion. It is the same fact stated twice. So an offer of an unusually high return is already a completed sentence about risk, whether or not risk is ever mentioned. The number is the disclosure. Now, the important part, and it is a matter of grammar rather than finance. Guaranteed is not a description of the money. It is a description of a promise. Every guarantee has an author. Somebody is standing behind it, and their willingness to stand there is the only thing the word contains. So the word never tells you the outcome is certain. It tells you that a specific party has said it is. And the value of that is exactly the value of that party, which is the thing you were not looking at. Which means the word does something strange to attention. It answers a question so you stop asking it. Once you hear that something is guaranteed, you stop evaluating what could go wrong because you have been told that part is handled. The word does not reduce the risk. It reduces your inspection of the risk, and those feel identical from the inside. That is why it is effective and that is why it is used. Now, an objection because this is not a claim that guarantees are meaningless. Plenty of real guarantees exist and they matter enormously. Some are backed by parties large enough and stable enough that the promise is about as solid as anything in ordinary life gets. There are also protections that exist by structure rather than by promise, which is a different and much stronger thing. So the argument is not that the word is always empty. It is that the word is a pointer and almost nobody follows it. If this is landing, tap subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Here is the question that follows the pointer. Guaranteed by whom and with what? Not who is saying it. Who is standing behind it, and out of what resources would they pay if the thing they promised does not happen? If the answer is that they would pay out of the same activity that is supposed to produce the return, then there is no guarantee at all. There is a single thing described twice in a way that sounds like two things. That is the entire structure, and it survives being explained because nobody thinks to ask. There is a second layer worth understanding, and it is where the real damage happens. A promise can be perfectly sincere and still fail. Most of the time nobody set out to deceive anybody. Somebody believed their own projection, and a projection stated confidently sounds exactly like a commitment. Sincerity is not a form of security. A person can be entirely honest and entirely unable to deliver. Which is why the question is about capacity, not character, and why judging the person is not a substitute for the question. There is also a pattern in where the word appears, and it is worth noticing. The word turns up most often where verification is hardest. Things that are far away, complicated, unfamiliar, or explained in language you would have to trust rather than check. That is not accidental. A guarantee is a substitute for understanding, so it is deployed wherever understanding would be expensive. The harder something is to evaluate, the more reassurance gets attached to it, and the reassurance is doing the work that evidence cannot. There is one more thing that makes this hard to resist, and it has nothing to do with greed. Certainty is the thing people actually want. Most people are not chasing large returns. They are trying to stop worrying, and a guarantee is sold as an end to worry. That is a much deeper want than gain, and it does not feel reckless at all. It feels responsible. So the people most exposed to this are frequently the most cautious ones, looking for somewhere they can stop thinking about it? There is a structural point here that is easy to miss, and it is the most useful thing in the episode. Real protection is almost never a promise. It is an arrangement. Something held separately, something that does not depend on anybody's ongoing willingness, something that survives the other party having a bad year. A promise requires the promiser to still be there. A structure does not care whether they are. So the question underneath the question is whether you are relying on somebody's intention or on somebody's inability to do otherwise. There is also a version of this that involves no offer at all, and it catches people who would never fall for the obvious kind. Sometimes the guarantee is implied by association. Nothing is stated. Something simply appears alongside things that are known to be solid, in the same conversation, on the same page, from the same source. Proximity is not a promise, and it is not backed by anybody, but it produces the same reduction in inspection that the word does. The most effective guarantees are frequently the ones that were never actually given. It is worth being honest about the limits of all this. None of this tells you what to do with your money, and it is not a claim that caution is always correct. Avoiding everything uncertain has its own cost, and that cost is real even though nobody sends you a bill for it. The point is narrower. It is that the word guaranteed contains no information by itself, and treating it as information is the error. It is a place where a question should go, not an answer that has already arrived. Once you see this, several things stop being confusing. Why the word appears earlier in a conversation than any detail does. Why the guarantor is described in general terms, and never as a specific party with a specific balance sheet. Why the promise figure is high enough to be attractive and low enough to be believable, which is a narrow band and a deliberate one. And why asking who is standing behind it is so often received as rudeness rather than as the ordinary question it is. That reaction is itself the answer, and it arrives faster than any document would. So, practically 3 things. Treat the word as a prompt rather than a fact, every single time, including in places where everything is legitimate. Ask who is standing behind it and out of what, and notice whether the answer is a party or a description. And hold one line firmly. If the return is unusual, the risk is unusual, and no amount of language changes that relationship. Because the two are not separate features that happen to travel together. They are one thing. Now back to the first question. Why is guaranteed the most dangerous word in money? Because it is not a claim about the future. It is an instruction to stop checking, and it works on the exact people who would otherwise have checked. Every real protection you have ever had came from a structure. None of it came from a word. If this was useful, subscribe and let us keep going. When was the last time you asked who was actually standing behind a promise? Tell me in the comments. Understand money and you will see the world. The quiet part.